Okay, so this tutorial is going to be on how to make your character jump and pass a parameter into a function. So you're going to learn a little bit more about functions. Why we're going to pass a parameter into this function, because I'm going to show you another way you could have made the character move by making his rigid body move. Because to make him jump, we're going to have to apply a force to his rigid body. So remember, rigid bodies are components we add to things to give them physics. So they bounce against things, react to things, fall against things, and and we're going to use that to make the character jump. And so there will be a link to that article below, of course, as there always is. So jump straight into the code. Right, we're going to create a function called jump, and it's going to take a parameter. So parameters are values that you pass in when you call a function. And what we want to pass in is we're going to pass in this move vector, because I'm going to show you another way of making the character move. So parameter needs a type, vector3, because that is what this type of variable is. And then it's going to be called horizontal movement. And then in this function, we're going to implement the alternative way to move the character. And we're also going to detect whether the jump button has been pressed and apply a force in the up direction. So 0, 1, 0. Remember that vector up is that way. So it's 1 in that direction to make the character appear like it's jumping. We need to add two properties though to the top of our class, which I've already added here. So if you zoom in on that, I've added a public rigid body called RB. So rigid body is what you give to things to give it physics, game objects give physics. And then we've also got this jump force. It's also public, so we can change it during runtime. And if I come back to here now, and I click on my simple people, and I look at my move script, I see I have an extra variable called rigid body, or RB, and there's nothing in it. Well, I want to connect its rigid body to it. So in the same way we did with text objects, I can drag this rigid body into it, and then I'm going to be able to manipulate it. So I come back to here, and I'm going to complete writing. I have actually written it down below here, so I'm going to just delete that. And I'm going to complete right. So I'm going to use complete right in this function. I'm going to use this horizontal movement to update the rigid body's velocity. So rigid body has a property called velocity. Now, the reason I'm showing this is because another student said to me that the better way of actually moving your character is to move it horizontally, left and right, using the physics. So actually updating the rigid body physics, and then it will behave more normally and react to objects and things. And that's actually what it says in Unity docs as well. But it just kind of ties in with being able to show you how to pass values into functions. So I'm going to update that. I'm going to create a new vector. And I'm going to get this horizontal movement, and I get the X value from there. And then I'm going to get the Y value. So the Y value is just our velocity, which is probably not going to be anything at the moment, because we haven't actually applied any force to it. So, but we're just going to get whatever that velocity is, and we're going to update the rigid body's velocity with that. And then finally, we're going to get the Z movement, horizontal Z movement. So this will basically do the same as what we were doing here. We were creating a move vector, and then we were actually updating the transform of our character. We were changing its position directly, but we're doing it now by changing its rigid body's velocity, which will move the whole character with it, and it is a better way of doing it. But to make it jump, if this has confused you a little bit, don't worry too much. We're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to use the input library to get button down. Which button down do we want? We want the jump button. And we are now going to apply a force to this rigid body. So we write rigid body, and there's a function called add force to it. So you can look this up in the Unity docs as well, and you can see all the things you can do to a rigid body. But one of them is you can add a force. We need to then tell it in which direction are we going to add this force. So we're going to add it in the up direction, in the Y up direction. And then we're going to multiply that vector, that up director, by whatever the jump force is that you set up here. Mine set to 10. If you set it to 100, I guess it will jump higher. Play around with that and give it a go. And then we need to say what kind of force we're going to apply. So we're going to apply a force mode impulse. So if you look up the docs for this, it's basically an instantaneous force. So it's as if we're pushing on an object. We're just pushing on it, and then it's going to get that force and move in that direction. And you can also look up in the Unity docs things about this as well. So I think if you went to Rigidbody Unity, I'll just show that webpage over here, and you look into here, all the things you can do. Add force is one of them. If we clicked on add force function, it would probably tell us the sorts of forces that we were able to apply. Yeah, we've got force mode impulse, velocity change, and acceleration. So I'll put this link below as well, and in the article. It's worth looking into these docs to try and understand what all these forces do and all the different code that we're writing. So then you become a really good programmer. So basically, this is adding a force in the up direction, depending on whatever that force is. And that's the kind of impulse. Maybe you could try and use a different sort of force modes and see how that makes your character react. So we save that. The last thing we need to do is we need to call it. Again, we've got to call a function from our update function and sort of jump to it. But this time we need to pass in this move vector, because we're getting we're passing the value of the move vector into this parameter called horizontal movement that's of type vector3, and we're just updating the velocity of our object depending on how we're moving left or right or forward and up and down. And that's the official way that you're meant to actually update movement. So and that's how you can pass parameters. So let's save that, and then if I run it, when we look on the animation tree, if we go to the right layer, let's go to the jumping layer and see what happens if I press space. Well, we're applying a force, but you can see the animation's actually not changing, which isn't quite what we want. Also, spacebar is actually generating those boxes. But now look, we can kind of fly, but so we are moving up, but we're not quite jumping. So in the same way, let's look at what if there's an animation here. Yes, there's a jump B animation. So we come back to the script, and in the same way we were doing this here, we're going to set the animator dot set bool, and we're going to set the jump B to true when we get button down is pressed and it's jumping. However, else if get button up, so we release it, what do we want to happen? Well, we want to set the animation, I guess, to be false. I'm not sure how this will work. Maybe this isn't quite what we want. Perhaps it will animate back to being idle automatically. So save that and let's just run that and see what happens. Let's start some semicolons. Something else if, not else if, else if. So what's it say? Line 73 expected that. Line 73. But maybe I've deleted the final class bracket. Just be careful with brackets. Make sure you've got open colons. Just read the errors. Run that now, and I press jump. So now you should probably see the character animating a jump movement. And if we keep pressing jump, it keeps jumping up. Of course, perhaps you want a fall one, but a jump one is enough. And maybe that jump force is a little bit too much. But you can play around with that and you can see it's adjusting there. So now, if I'm walking and I press jump, I go to a totally different kind of jump. I go from a walk to a walking jump or a run to a running jump. And we've still got that bug where the character kind of seems to be moving from walking to running. So I'll try and fix that. But yeah, that is how you create a function that takes in a parameter. Why are we taking that parameter? Just to demonstrate how we can actually do real horizontal movement by updating the rigid body. And then we're detecting if we press the jump button down, and then we're pressing if we let go, and we're turning the animation back to false. I wonder if we took that out, what would happen? Would it keep jumping, or would it just automatically go back to its idle state? I think it probably would in this case. But this is something you can play around with. Do need to reset it, else it will never be able to get back into its jump state. So once you've set a build true or something in the animation tree, you need to reset it when you release the key or whatever, so that it can be animated again. Right. So the link to this article will be in the video below on our Medium, and the code will be there. And there's some extra tasks here as well. So, for example, currently our character can jump in the air. Maybe you can think of a way, or Google a way of finding out how you can detect whether or not it's touching the ground. Try some different force modes. What would happen if we applied the force to a different vector? So vector 3 right, vector 3 whatever. And play as a jump force, make it a bit less so it doesn't jump as high. So play around with that, and do those extra exercises, and you'll really understand it.